The musty scent of old wood and varnish filled my workshop as I carefully repaired the gears of an antique clock. The steady tick-tock of the clocks around me provided a rhythmic comfort, a familiar backdrop to my solitary life. It had been 5 years since Emily's tragic accident, and the silence she left behind was only ever interrupted by the passage of time. One evening, as I sorted through a box of old parts that a customer had brought in, I found something unusual at the bottom. It was an ancient hourglass, its brass frame tarnished and its glass cloudy with age. The sand within was a deep crimson, unlike anything I'd ever seen. Intrigued, I placed it on my workbench, wiping away the dust that obscured its intricate engravings. There was a strange allure to it, an almost hypnotic pull that made it impossible to look away. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the hourglass. It felt out of place, an anomaly in my ordered world of gears and springs. I decided to investigate its origin. The engravings were in a language I couldn't decipher, so I took it to Professor Hartman, a friend and an expert in ancient languages. "It's old, very old," he said, examining it under a magnifying glass. "The inscription suggests it has something to do with time manipulation. A myth, of course, but fascinating nonetheless." His words haunted me. Time manipulation. What if it wasn't just a myth? What if this hourglass had the power to change the past? Driven by a growing obsession, I spent days researching similar artifacts and legends, piecing together fragments of ancient texts. The more I learned, the more convinced I became that this hourglass was genuine. One stormy night, as lightning flashed outside my window, I decided to test it. Holding the hourglass in my hands, I turned it over and watched the crimson sand begin to flow. A strange sensation washed over me, a feeling of weightlessness, as if I were being pulled through a tunnel. When the sand finished flowing, I found myself standing in my workshop. But something was different. The clocks, the furniture, everything looked newer, untouched by time. I stumbled outside and my heart nearly stopped. The streets were bustling with life, the buildings pristine and unweathered. I realized I had traveled back 5 years, to a time before Emily's accident. The shock was overwhelming, but the implications were clear. I had a chance to save her. Finding Emily was both exhilarating and terrifying. She was exactly as I remembered, her laugh, her smile, everything. I couldn't tell her who I really was, or how I knew her fate. Instead, I followed her, ensuring she stayed away from the places and events that would lead to her death. It was a delicate balance, trying to alter the past without revealing the truth. Days turned into weeks, and it seemed my efforts were working. Emily was safe, alive, and unaware of the danger she had been in. But then, strange things began to happen. Objects would disappear and reappear in odd places. People I knew well would act as if they had never met me. I felt a growing sense of unease, as if reality itself were unraveling. One night I woke to find Emily standing over me, holding the hourglass. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "You shouldn't have done it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You changed too much." Before I could respond, she turned the hourglass over. The world around me blurred, and I was thrust into darkness. When I regained consciousness, I was no longer in my workshop. I was in a small, dimly lit room, the hourglass on a table before me. Emily was there too, but she looked different, older, weary. "Welcome to my reality," she said. "I found the hourglass first. I've been trying to fix our future, to stop you from making the same mistakes I did." She explained that in her timeline, I had died in a tragic accident, and she had discovered the hourglass while sorting through my belongings. Desperate to save me, she had used it to alter the past, only to find herself trapped in an endless loop of unintended consequences. Each change she made created new problems, new fractures in reality. "We're caught in a cycle," she said. "Every time one of us tries to fix the past, we end up here, in this twisted version of our lives." I felt a cold dread settle over me. The hourglass was a curse, not a gift. Its power came at a terrible price. Emily and I were prisoners of our own desires, our attempts to rewrite history condemning us to this nightmarish existence. Desperate for a solution, we tried to destroy the hourglass, to break the cycle once and for all, but every attempt failed. It was indestructible, a relic of some ancient, malevolent force. In our despair, we realized there was only one way to end the torment. We had to let go of the past. Holding hands, Emily and I turned the hourglass over one last time. As the crimson sand began to flow, we made a pact to live in the present, to accept the losses and move forward. The world around us shifted, and we found ourselves back in my workshop, the hourglass gone. The clocks ticked on, marking the passage of time. Emily was gone, not lost in some parallel timeline, but truly gone, her memory a painful reminder of the cost of our obsession. I knew I could never bring her back, but I had learned to cherish the time we had, to appreciate the fleeting moments that life offered. In the end, the hourglass taught me a harsh lesson. Time is not meant to be tampered with. It flows in one direction, and our attempts to alter its course can only lead to sorrow. I returned to my work, finding solace in the steady tick-tock of the clocks, a reminder that life, for all its imperfections, must be lived in the present. The air was thick with the musty scent of decay, the kind that lingered in old places long forgotten. My friends and I stood before the looming silhouette of the abandoned mansion, its windows like dark, empty eyes staring back at us. The legends surrounding this place were enough to send shivers down anyone's spine, but curiosity got the better of us. We had to know what secrets lay hidden within those crumbling walls. We were a group of 5, Sarah, David, Emily, Jack, and me. We'd grown up hearing stories about the old Carmichael mansion on the edge of town. It had been abandoned for decades, ever since the last owner mysteriously disappeared. Some said it was haunted, others said it was cursed. None of us truly believed those tales, but the thrill of exploring the unknown was too enticing to pass up. As we pushed open the heavy front door, it groaned in protest, revealing a grand foyer layered with dust and cobwebs. Our flashlights cut through the darkness, casting eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper and cracked tiles. The mansion was a relic from another time, a place where the past clung stubbornly to the present. We ventured deeper into the house, each room more decrepit than the last. The library, with its shelves of moldering books. The ballroom, with its tattered drapes and broken chandeliers. Every corner seemed to whisper stories of a bygone era. We split up, hoping to cover more ground, but we stayed within earshot of each other, the atmosphere too unsettling to wander off alone. It was in the basement that we stumbled upon something truly bizarre. Emily had called us over, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. There, hidden behind a false wall, we discovered a door that wasn't on any blueprint we had found. It was an anomaly, an architectural impossibility. With a mix of trepidation and excitement, we opened it, revealing a room that seemed frozen in time. The furniture was pristine, the air oddly fresh, as if it had been preserved from the moment the house was abandoned. The room was elegantly furnished, with an ornate rug, a grand piano, and paintings adorning the walls. There was an old clock on the mantel, its hands stopped at exactly midnight. A chill ran down my spine as we stepped inside, the door closing silently behind us. We began to explore, the sense of unease growing with each passing moment. There was something disturbingly familiar about this place. The paintings on the walls, the arrangement of the furniture, it all seemed to trigger faint, fragmented memories. Then we found the diary. It was lying on a small table by the window, its cover worn and pages yellowed with age. As we opened it, the entries seemed to leap off the pages, filled with frantic scribbles recounting the last day of the mansion's previous owner. The entries spoke of a curse, of being trapped in an endless loop, reliving the same day over and over again. As we read, a cold realization began to dawn on us. The events described in the diary mirrored our own experiences, down to the smallest detail. The owner wrote about discovering the hidden room, about the growing sense of déjà vu, and the horror of realizing they were trapped in time. Panic set in as we tried to leave the room, but the door wouldn't budge. It was as if the house had come alive, determined to keep us inside. The walls seemed to close in, the air growing thick and suffocating. And then, like a jolt of electricity, it hit us. We were the original occupants. The diary was ours. We had been here before, countless times, cursed to forget our past lives and to repeat our last day in this mansion for eternity. I looked at my friends. their faces pale with the same dawning horror that gripped me. We had no memory of our past lives, but deep down, we knew it was true. The mansion had ensnared us in its dark web, forcing us to relive the same day over and over, with no hope of escape. We tried everything to break free. We searched the room for hidden clues, for any way to undo the curse, but it was futile. The room seemed to mock our efforts, the clock on the mantel ticking away the moments until midnight. As the final minute approached, a sense of resignation settled over us. We gathered together, holding hands, and waited for the inevitable. The room began to blur and twist around us, the world outside fading away. I felt a sensation like falling, and then we were back at the front door, staring at the mansion as if seeing it for the first time. The cycle had begun anew. As we stood there, a chilling thought crept into our minds. We were doomed to explore the mansion again, to find the hidden room, to uncover our cursed fate, over and over, with no end in sight. The mansion had claimed us, and we were forever its prisoners, reliving our final day in an unending nightmare. I could feel the pull of the mansion, the irresistible urge to step inside. My friends and I exchanged weary glances, knowing that we were powerless to resist. The mansion was our prison, our curse, and there was no escaping it. With heavy hearts, we pushed open the door once more, the cycle beginning anew. The wind howled through the thick canopy of the old forest, making the small town on its edge feel uneasy. I arrived just as the sun was setting, casting long shadows on the cobblestone streets. This town had been plagued by disappearances for decades, with each victim vanishing into the forest. As a detective, I'd seen a lot of strange cases, but nothing like this. The townspeople were wary of outsiders, their eyes full of fear and suspicion. They spoke softly about the missing, sharing stories of loved ones who had gone into the forest and never returned. I listened closely, feeling a strange connection to their tales. It was like I had heard these stories before. I checked into a small, dimly lit inn at the heart of the town. The innkeeper, an elderly woman with a kind but tired face, handed me the key with a look that seemed to hold a warning. "Be careful," she said quietly. "The forest has a way of taking what it wants." Her words stuck with me as I settled into my room, the whispers starting to seep into my thoughts. As I started my investigation, odd things began to happen. I would catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, only to turn and find nothing there. At night, I heard whispers, faint and indistinct, like the rustling of leaves. They seemed to guide me, pulling me deeper into the mystery of the town. One evening, I found myself standing at the edge of the forest, the tall trees looming over me like silent guardians. The whispers grew louder, urging me to enter. I hesitated, feeling a chill run down my spine. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to go in, that the answers I sought were hidden within the forest. I followed the whispers, my footsteps crunching on the forest floor. The further I went, the darker it became, as if the very air was thickening around me. The trees seemed to close in, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. I reached a clearing where the trees parted, revealing an old, run-down cabin. It looked abandoned, the windows shattered and the door hanging off its hinges. But something about it felt familiar. Pushing the door open, I stepped inside. The cabin was filled with a musty smell, and dust floated in the pale moonlight streaming through the broken windows. I explored the small space, my eyes scanning the remnants of a life long forgotten. There, in the corner, I found a worn photograph. It was of a family, mother, father, and a young boy. The boy's eyes seemed to stare right through me, his expression a mix of innocence and fear. Suddenly it hit me. The boy in the photograph was me. Memories came flooding back, memories I had buried deep within my mind. I remembered wandering into this forest as a child, drawn by an inexplicable force. I remembered the whispers, guiding me deeper and deeper until I reached this cabin. And then, nothing. Darkness. Silence. The boy had vanished, and the town had mourned his loss. I stumbled back, the weight of the revelation pressing down on me. I had been investigating my own disappearance, all these years believing I was a detective, when in reality, I was a ghost. trapped between worlds, seeking closure for a mystery that had haunted the town for decades. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They led me to a hidden trapdoor beneath the floorboards. With trembling hands, I pried it open and descended into the darkness below. The air was damp and cold, the walls lined with forgotten memories. I found a small hidden chamber, and there, lying in a makeshift grave, were the remains of a young boy. My heart ached as I knelt beside the bones, tears streaming down my face. This was my final resting place, the end of a journey that had begun so many years ago. The whispers seemed to sigh, a collective exhalation of relief. They had guided me here, to this moment of truth and acceptance. As I sat in the darkness, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The forest no longer seemed menacing, but rather a keeper of secrets long kept. The townspeople would finally have closure, the disappearances explained, the mystery solved, and I too could finally rest. News of the discovery spread quickly. The whispers that had guided me to my final resting place continued their work, leading the townspeople to the same spot. Drawn by an inexplicable force, they were led to the cabin and the hidden chamber. The townspeople gathered to pay their respects, their faces a mix of sorrow and relief. As they stood around the small grave, they shared stories of the boy, now known to be me, and the mystery that had haunted them for so long. There was a sense of closure, a feeling that the town could finally move forward. And as for me, I felt myself fading, my purpose fulfilled. The forest whispered its final goodbye, and I slipped away, leaving behind the shadows of the past and stepping into the light of the unknown. The whispers quieted, and the forest returned to its usual silence. The mystery that had hung over it finally laid to rest.